that whole back building.
Yeah.
Oh, the back building there?
Yes.
Okay.
So they just applied.
Yeah.
They had applied for once before, they got denied, then they reapplied for it, and they
Right. Round 2 came out.
revamped it up. We added some stuff to it, now it's coming back to me.
Oh, great.
It sounds, I guess it worked.
Okay, and you want to go on to the second part of your report, which is sort of the new format. It's based generally on the information that Glastonbury provides. Amy does it a little different than Glastonbury. She's using fiscal notes as opposed to the form, but I happen to like the fiscal notes because you can see which line it applies to.
So much easier. So since we just did the quarterly last month, there's really nothing here that you haven't or that hasn't already been brought to your attention. Nothing significant has changed within the last 3 to 4 weeks. So if there's any specific questions that you have, happy to answer them, but I don't think that there's anything in here really that hasn't been brought to your attention during the last report.
So the only thing that has changed is sort of the excess revenues is down to 305. I think in our quarterlies it was a little bit higher than that, wasn't it, at 5? And that's just the normal fluctuation, I'm assuming.
The 305, I think there was a little bit more that was added to our investment income. I think I was projecting around $1 million or so, and we're at like 1.3 million.
So the 300 is excess revenue?
Mm-hmm.
So to the good.
Right.
Okay. So that's good news.
Yes.
And then, Amy, one sort of general question I had, the reason I have it is that Glastonbury has in there is encumbrances.
Mm-hmm.
How do we account for encumbrances, and how do you think about that?
So our encumbrances go through our financial accounting system. So they enter a PO, and then it's automatically translated into an encumbrance in our system. So we have essentially what you have here. So you'll have your budgeted, you'll have your actual, and then in our financial system, we have another line that's for encumbrances. And so we'll have, say, $500 in the encumbrance line. As soon as that's paid, that's zeroed out, and it goes into your actual line, what you guys look at.
So maybe it's worth adding an encumbrance line, because when you think about left to spend.
So yes and no. I was thinking about that. The majority of our budget is salaries. So that's going to be the majority. Like right now, we have about $500,000 in encumbrances. $400,000 of that is our medical insurance because we pay about $200,000 a month. So it's not really anything that's going to be significant to sway. And then sometimes a lot of our departments will put in so that they don't have to go back to the department head for every time they buy a $5 part. They'll put in like a blanket PO, and those aren't always accurate as to what they think they're going to spend. They don't want to have to get a PO for every $10 item.
Then I guess I would just ask you to add to your report that if there's any significant encumbrance other than something like that that we should be aware of.
Yep.
And you can do that through the narrative section. Are people comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. Then do you want to go through the expenditures, or should we just add questions?
You can just ask questions.
Okay. Derek or Bert, did you guys have any questions?
No.
Okay, so we have a couple of outstanding things. The perennial economic development, 12,000 overage. Amy is still looking into that. Do we have any updates as sort of how we're?
I think this is just something that has to be cleaned up at year end. It was just something that happened during the munis conversion. We are going to have other line item transfers just because of the CSEA contract. So I was just holding off until year end to do all the transfers at once instead of piecemeal. But there's no supplemental appropriations needed.
That will be a transfer using current budget.
Savings, right?
Okay, excellent. And then I did have a question about the Board of Ed, and I don't know why. Can you walk us through sort of the status of that? And they're looking at the year-end projections and where they're finding savings to come in on budget.
But then I'm going to have nothing to talk about during the Board of Ed quarterly.
All right, we will wait then. Yes, yes. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, is there anything else on that? Let me get feedback from folks. Are people comfortable with the report?
I like the report. I like the way the notes are laid out. Easy to follow.
Font is big enough. Yes, I do like it.
Okay, great.
And you'll notice in the quarterly, we do have another column for year-end projections, which we don't do in the monthly. And I'm comfortable with that, but I did want to point out that difference to folks.
No, this is very clear.
Okay.
Except for This item under landfill, percent spent. DIV over.
What page are you on?
On page
Yeah,
4.
I can clear those out. It's just the Excel formula. We can just change them to zeros. We typically do that during the budget.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
Got it. I didn't even notice that. Thank you, Bert. Okay, now we're going on to the town quarterly financial report. So this ends at March 30th, 2023. So as of that, so it's not the most current, but it still gives us a more comprehensive look at the budget, especially in capital. For members of the public, we did receive this report in April, but because the budget at that time was taking up a lot of our time, we put off the quarterly discussion of capital. And I just wanted to remind the public that the Board of Finance has a policy to permit overages in the CNR fund, capital non-recurring fund, by 10%, but not to exceed $5,000, as long as there's sufficient savings elsewhere in the fund. And for members of the public who may have reviewed these reports at home and wonder why are some of these projects over budget, that is why they are over budget. And then we make those corrections at year end. It's a policy that was done for administrative ease, with no impact financial, because there's sufficient resources within the fund itself to cover the minor overages. That is not the case for the capital projects in the CIP, the capital improvement plan. Those are capped at the amount appropriated and voted on by the voters. So with that, we'll let Amy lead us off and note anything of significance or anything you want to highlight.
So just the one that's probably about a little less than halfway down during the page. I had just made a note at the time of the report when it went out because the director wasn't available. The one that's $3,300 over, and he did confirm that this was a coding error. There was a tree invoice that was coded to this project incorrectly, so that one is not over budget.
Excellent.
That will be corrected. I think that was it.
Can you speak to the, there was a berm grant that we had applied for and did not receive?
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I talked to Tony about that today, and without receiving the grant, the project is on hold until it will be mandated by the state.
And once it's mandated by the state, how will we pay for it?
That's what their fund balance is for.
Okay. So to the extent we have asked why they keep such a huge fund balance, their fund balance was about $7 million. This project is $3.2 million. Now we know why they keep such a big fund balance. Okay, so the anticipated fund balance, and that will be done next fiscal year, I'm assuming.
I'm not sure when the state's going to
Okay.
mandate it.
Okay.
How should we think about the uncommitted balances for completion dates that have come and gone? What happens to those funds?
So those will either get closed out at year end, and they'll disappear, or I have been keeping the ones, especially on the school side, open. So the ones that say completed need state audit. Those are the ones, those are the ones where the state's 7 years behind, so we can't close them out until we get permission from the state.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we go on to the CNR then? Page 12. And this is where, for members of the public, you will see some minor overages, but none exceed 10% or $5,000, and those will be cleaned up at year end. I did have one question there that I'd asked Amy to reach out to council. I don't know if you've had a chance to do that, but the infrared asphalt trailer has had no expenditure since it was approved in fiscal year 20, which means it was approved in 2019. Technically, by our charter, that no expenditures have been made within 3 years, which is the case there, unless there's been an error in accounting. That project has technically lapsed, and if they want to buy it again, they'll have to come to us for a supplemental appropriation. So,
Yeah, I think I had spoken to this one at the December quarterly, but I had followed up with Tom Fry on this one, and they're not going to move forward with the project. So it's okay going back into fund balance.
okay, so for the next quarter or year-end close will be our
They'll
next
close it
quarter.
out.
They'll close it
Right.
out. Okay.
So that goes for any of the
Brand,
20s.
Right.
it's some of them you can see there has been expenditure made, and if there's been, even $5 expended, that complies with the charter. But if there's been no expenditure within 3 years, That's exciting.
That was fun.
Yeah, brings back memories of October 2011. All right. I'm trying to think if I had any others there. That was all I had. Did anyone have any other?
If you keep moving, we'll be able to get through the meeting.
Okay. I do want to give credit to Amy. And initially there was a backlog in CNR, and Amy's done a great job sort of consolidating and getting it. So you'll see most of our projects are 2021 and beyond, and they get smaller and smaller. Most are 2022, 2023, which is as they should be. Because what we don't want to be in the position of, and what we'll talk about over the summer, is how do we plan for capital so we're not approving them and then waiting 2 years before we expend for them. So Amy's done a good job of sort of cleaning that up. As I think when Amy and I first met, when she came, I said it's going to take you 5 to 10 years, but she's making good progress. So thank you for that. All right, now Amy.
So is that to say that we might be able to break up the amounts that we allocate to those capital items over, let's say, a 2-year period as opposed to just all at once?
Yeah, so I think there's an interesting debate, mostly in the CIP things. When do you fund and the timing of funds? Some towns will fund a design phase and the engineering phase at those are typically $300,000 to $400,000, and then the major project 2 years later. Or do you fund it all at once and then you don't do it? Or is there some, especially for the CNR, for funding it and it's not being purchased for 2 years, it doesn't make sense to fund it. It will help with the cash flow and enable us to meet other priorities. But it's but that's hard to do. But it's something we're aiming for. Okay, Amy, the exciting part.
Yes. So if you go to page 16, I don't think there's anything that's really changed on the revenue side. Anything significant in grants, anyways. If you go to page 16, you go all the way to almost the bottom at the end of that chart. It says total general fund, and then it has your budget of $77 million, year-to-date expenditures of $52.5, and then prior year 52.3. We look at those percentages, the 68.27 compared to the 70.3%. So you can see from year to year that they were consistent overall with the prior year, even though we're anticipating a deficit this year, as we had a deficit in the prior year as well. So that makes sense. Speaking to the deficit, we're still anticipating a year-end deficit of about $730,000. We were able to mitigate some of this deficit by the spending freeze and a hiring freeze. There were a couple of retirements during the year and then a couple unanticipated vacancies. So the salary savings from those positions, as well as their benefits, contribute about $400,000 to the estimated savings. And then we had some additional open choice money that we weren't anticipating for about $300,000. So as of right now, that's the anticipated deficit and the closing of the deficit. I have not received any major news from special education about any significant students or significant placements that it's going to change that as of now, but
6 weeks to go.
Exactly.
All right. So that's good news. One of the things, I guess, when you reach out to council on the library, can you also ask whether we need to do supplemental appropriations for project choice or whether that does not require sub-appropriation? You might as well get that cleaned up and have that in writing. But that's great news. Does anyone have any questions about the Board of Education at this point? I just have one question on health. Last year we were at about 77% spend, and this year only 70%. Is there? Just wondering.
That was the accounting change. So we're a little bit. So the dollar values pretty much the same, but the percent of the budget is different because we're taking it over 10 months, which is the actual contribution into the fund instead of 12 months and using estimates.
Okay, and same with maintenance of the plant and the equipment. Last year we were at 81, and this year we're at about 88, so about a 7% difference. Is that just timing?
So this is timing related to the freeze that we did last year and all of those projects that we put off to this year. It's really only $100,000, but those were all of the purchases that we didn't do last year because of the spending freeze that they did at the beginning of the year this year, and just carried forward.
And then community services, we're at 114%. I'm assuming that's because it's offset by revenues, is that?
So it is offset by revenues, but that's also the increase coming out of COVID for people renting our space and our use of our facilities. There is a revenue offset though, yes.
So we're spending more there, but
We're collecting more too.
So
But the money just goes to the town, so it
Exactly.
doesn't show on their report.
Okay.
They don't get to have revenue.
They don't get revenue from renting their facility?
The town gets it. Board of Education cannot have revenue.
But they do get revenue for student activities. So so why isn't this similar to student activities?
Student activities are specific donations for specific purposes that people will have fundraisers or events or parents are contributing for specific reasons. This is just, we're charging somebody a service, and according to the state of Connecticut, we're not allowed to do that. It goes to the town.
Interesting. Any other questions from folks? And that comes always the height of every year, which is the tax collector suspense list. And people always wonder, why do we publish names and addresses and the reason for the suspense list? And the answer is state law requires it, and that's Connecticut General Statute, Section 12-165, Municipal Suspense Tax Book. That reads, each municipality shall have a suspense tax book. At least once in each year, each collector of taxes in each municipality shall deliver to the Board of Finance a statement giving by rate bill, the name and address of the person against whom each uncollectible tax was levied, and the reason why such collector believes that such tax is uncollectible. They do within the statute make it clear this is not an abatement, and they do continue to seek reimbursement and collection, but it's an accounting change that shows that we have not been able to collect it up to this point. It goes in a different accounting ledger, I guess. We call it a suspense book. Amy, did you want to add to that?
No, I don't think so. That's pretty a good synopsis of it. Just that most of it is the motor vehicles. And I think that there was one actual real estate property that was added to the list this year that was recommended by council.
So how are they categorized? I'm trying, I see. Okay, I don't know what's left hand side it says motor vehicle. And I guess by date, right?
Amy, the total amount is only about 40,000, is that right?
So,
47. So I actually have to sign this. Okay, so that's also really exciting.
The break.
Okay. All right. So with that, may I have a motion? Mike, do we still have you online?
He's still here. He's just on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. May I have a motion effective May 16, 2023 to approve the suspense list in the amount of $46,775.37 and to authorize the tax collector, Colleen O'Connor, to transfer these accounts to the suspense tax book.
so moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion carries unanimously. Next on our list is to appoint the auditor for fiscal year 2022-2023, which will conclude on June 30th of this year. The Board of Finance is required by state statutes and the town charter to appoint the town's auditor and to file with the Secretary of the Office of Policy Management. And although our board doesn't technically file it, Amy does. Thank you, Amy. It is our responsibility. The name of the independent auditor within 30 days to the close of the fiscal year, which we are now not quite within that time frame, but we have to hold another special meeting. So we're doing it early. This is the fifth year of a contract awarded to Clifton Larson Allen LLP after the town issued an RFQ in August 2018. It was for 3 years, and then we had the option of extending it for 2 years. So this is the second year extension. We'll have to go out to bid after this extension. Wendy? There we go. Okay. There's no fiscal impact to the town's financial impact to the town's budget because we do budget for both on the town side and the Board of Ed for a total appropriation of $67,000 between the town and the Board of Ed. It's within what we have budgeted, so no supplemental or additional financial impact, although there is a cost for the audits. With that, may I have a motion effective May 16, 2023 to appoint Clifton Larson Allen LLP as the town of Simsbury's auditors for the fiscal year 2022-2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Excellent. So we have on here the first discussion of the summer capital discussion. As you may recall, during the budget cycle, and members of the public who may not have been present, we voted to have a capital discussion for financial planning purposes and policy discussion about how to better plan for capital, and especially some of the bigger capital projects that are coming down the line and how we can fund for it. And I wanted to ask Amy, who's given this some thought, to start us off as sort of how she sees some of the focus we can add to the focus. I mean, you have the chance to review her recommendations, and I think they're very good, but I want her to share with the board and see if the board concurs and wants to add something or put off something.
So less of capital and more of long-term financial planning. We do our budget modeling now, which is great and gives us a sense. But lying some foundation in other areas, like developing goals over, say, new grand list growth. Do we want to be strict in that growth and only hire new personnel with it? Do we not want to hire anybody? Do we just want to put it towards CNR? Do we want to use it to pay down our debt? Looking at ways to fully fund CNR in our operating budget over a certain period of time. Looking at spend to save initiatives that any department heads might be anticipating coming down the line that they'd like to take advantage of. Getting a capital plan review amongst the three boards and see if there's any consensus or agreement on projects that are a want versus a need that everybody's willing to take off or that everybody wants to put on. And then some like investment techniques that have been successful in other towns because our investment is so limited with the state statutes. More of just like a big picture thinking and some of the goals and maybe new policies that might come out of it. That was my initial thoughts.
Open up to Derek, Frank, and Bert.
So I got went by a little quickly.
Well, we'll have more time. This
Yeah,
is the
they all
first.
sounded good. I'm not sure I digested them.
Yes, yeah, I'm good for now.
The one thing I did ask Amy to add to the list is to start us with a review of the current capital projects and their status of completion. So I always think it's a good idea when you look to the future, look at where you are today
Yeah.
and where you're going. And then, during the budget tri-board, we've asked for some transparency information and information our board needs so that we can make policy decisions in terms of some of the information that is given to us, but we can review those during the tri-board, some of those specific things that we have asked for. And then obviously, Amy, if you could do sort of the elephant in the room conversation about squadron, when we think just a time frame, is that within the next 10 years, 15 years? How might we think about when we could do that? And some initial numbers on what that might mean to taxes. And I don't know that we'll have enough information at that point to do that, but we should at least start thinking about how we're going to fund that in the long term and what we're going to do in between, given that we're probably not going to be able to do a full renovation in the next 5 to 10 years. Is there anything else on that? Okay, so then what we're gonna do, is I'm gonna recommend, and Mike, if you could just be available by text so that we can text you after 8 o'clock when we need you for the mill rate.
Actually, do you want to do the minute?
Let's do the minutes, yes, I forgot about the minutes. Yes. May I have a motion to amend the agenda to consider the minutes before we recess?
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is amended to review the minutes. I did send in some changes to Amy, which she
They're actually incorporated.
which she already incorporated. So if people have had a chance to review them, please let us know if there are any changes.
I went through them and didn't have any comments.
Yeah, move to approve them.
Why don't you do, we can do, if there are no changes, why don't you make the motion to approve the 3 minutes?
I move to approve all 3 minutes.
Of March 20,
I'm sorry. I move to approve the minutes of March. I can read my copy.
oh, you have it.
March 21st, April 4th, and April 18 of 2023.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. So that leaves just one final motion that our board needs to take. It's probably the most important motion we take of the year, and that will be setting of the mill rate. We will be doing that as close to 8 p.m. as soon as they have the numbers ready for us. Assuming it passes, we anticipate the mill rate for the town to be 30.82. The mill rate for the fire district is still anticipated at 1, do we think?
Mhm.
Okay, so total 31.82. Mill rate. Not definite. We have to see what happens with the results of the budget, but just for the record, Amy, there's no new revenue that we need to be aware of that could reduce the mill rate.
Nothing that I've been notified of now.
And is there anything else of material interest to our board that could impact our decision making when we go to set the mill rate?
Not that I'm aware of.
Great. All right, with that, may I have a motion to recess and we'll reconvene at about 8:05?
Yes, so move.
All right.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we will reconvene at 8:05, and at that point, Art will be joining us to set the mill rate.
Okay.
That one. Now, coming back from recess, we have the results of the referendum, and it's been reported to us that all 3 questions passed. We'll get the final numbers later in the evening, but we have confirmed with our registrar of voters and our director of finance that they passed by a wide enough margin that there's no doubt they have passed. So with that, we are now prepared to set the mill rate. We will be setting the mill rate just for the town, not for the fire district. So when you get your tax bills, your taxes will include the fire district, but that is not set by us. Let's see, the following operating budgets were passed: $31,679,397 for the Board of Selectmen, $31,679,397 for the Board of Selectmen. For the Board of Education, $81,576,437. And for Sewer Use Fund, Residential Rental Properties, Simsbury Farms, Non-Public Schools, Debt Retirement Capital, and Capital Non-Recurring Budget, $17,149,930. May I have a motion effective May 16th, 2023 to set the mill rate for fiscal year 23-24 at 30.82 mils.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
No, that's for, yeah.
Bert,
Okay.
second. All in
Should
favor,
know
please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you to everyone who worked on the budgets. Congratulations to the Boards of Selectmen, Board of Education, the citizens of Simsbury, and Amy for all your efforts on the budget, and of course members of the Board of Finance and Simsbury community media who sat with us all night. So we appreciate that, and we look forward to serving you in the coming months. And with that, good night.